Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm really pleased to be joined today by an old friend, Nigel Lewis, who I think has probably been commentating on the housing market for longer than I have. Nigel, great to see you, and thank you for coming on. I was thinking back earlier today. We would have first met when you edited the Location magazine.
Correct.
I mean, how long ago is that? We've been making the program for 21 years. It's 36 series, I think. So
yes, I think that was mid-noughties, wasn't it? The magazine.
Yeah,
I think so. That's good 15 years ago or so. Yeah, absolutely. That was a fun time. It was a fun magazine, and it was when the brave new world of magazines believed that the internet was a flash in the pan, I think.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Well, I mean, talk about brave new times. I mean, this year it's got to be a standout year in your brain, hasn't it? In terms of property journalism and what you've had to write about. I think it's caught us all by surprise.
Massively so. I think if I had £1 for every agent who's told me they've never seen this before, then I could retire. But absolutely, and from a journalism point of view as well, it has been an extraordinary year, as any journalist who covers this sector will tell you, because we had a captive audience. We have not only consumers but also estate agents sat at home on their computers. Both selling homes, but also wanting to know what's going on, because they didn't have the pub chat to catch up on any longer.
Yeah, everybody wanted to know what was going on, and when it was a kind of changing feast, and it wasn't behaving in the way that we all anticipated that it would behave. So neither did the government. So all of us came to dread Friday afternoons, because Friday afternoons at about 4:30 is when the government would, on almost every occasion, announce the different changes to regulations that covered the industry. So the evictions changes all happened at about 4:30, 4:45. The closing and reopening of the industry were all announced at that. Anyway, so that made it quite fun. Because that's when you're generally winding down, not writing the biggest story of your life. It's not usual. I mean, for the agents, I think we were very lucky as an industry to be able to be open, because there were many industries that were shut. And the agents were out there working extremely hard, trying to keep the market alive and trying to help people move.
Absolutely.
But the consumers, of course, the actual people doing the moving, rather than facilitating it, were in the dark as to what was going on. They were desperate to buy or desperate to sell, depending on their view at the time. But they needed information about what was happening, and that was a moving feast.
Yes, it was, and I think. So the government absolutely did a brilliant job of keeping the agents informed about what their responsibilities and their modus operandi could be during this time. I definitely agree with you. But yes, the main thing I think the government didn't really think about is that I think they assumed that people would stand down during the pandemic, and what the government measured badly, let's call it, was that people would want to carry on moving during the pandemic, and they did. Let's face it, they did. I mean, there was, although the branches closed for 3 months or so, really most lettings carried on, and a fair number of sales carried on. Let's be honest about this. And although agents weren't supposed to be out there touting, there was enough of a pipeline going on through March, April, May, and June that it sort of kept the industry limping along for those months. And I think consumers definitely were pressing for the market to stay open, even though technically it was closed.
I was interested in your thoughts, who the kind of winners and losers were or are in how it's all shaken down, whether it's the first time buyers or whether it's the second time sellers who have got equity in their houses, or should we just kind of chat through the different market sectors?
Absolutely. I think first time buyers are marginally or just about winners in this, I believe. If you look at the data, then the number of first-time buyers as a percentage of all buyers has crept up post the pandemic, mainly because I think a lot of first-time buyers who are renting thought, I can't do this any longer. I will, by any means possible, I will get on the property ladder. And also, the boot was, they was on their foot. So just to misquote saying because they could, there were a lot of vendors at the time just after the pandemic who were desperate to move themselves and would take offers. So I think first-time buyers definitely have been helped by the pandemic. I think the losers have been the city house owners and the city flat owners, who have struggled badly to find buyers for their properties. I remember You and Yours, the BBC radio program, did an interview with a woman who was trying to sell a 2-bedroom flat in central Leeds during the pandemic and was struggling very badly because the cladding scandal, the leasehold scandal.
Oh my word.
The property market, city centres not being popular during the pandemic, all of this was playing against her, and she was having a terrible time of it. So I think they've been the losers. And I think the other losers probably were landlords who have really had a tough time last 18 months, 20 months. I mean, really bad. If you have had a poor tenant.
Yeah.
So I think that there have been winners and losers, definitely.
What about tenants? What about the renters? How have they done?
Well, that's a very good question. I think one takeout from the pandemic was that human beings are deep down can be, without prompting, lovely people. And I think the vast majority of tenants didn't take advantage of the evictions ban. There was a small minority, I think, who did, and who knew very well that they couldn't be evicted and were unlikely to be evicted until really now. If they hadn't paid their rent for a long time. I think that the tenants who I felt for were the young people who had probably just arrived 2 years ago from their courses. Professionals just arrived to their first jobs, rented their first property, and then discovered that their companies either folded or they had to work from home and were paying for rented properties they didn't really need in areas they still didn't really know very well, and still probably didn't have any friends. So I think the better landlords are the ones who said, you know what, you can just leave, I'll find a new tenant. But that's a hard decision as a landlord to make.
Landlords have got mortgages and debts and that kind of thing.
Correct.
How about the industry? How would you say the industry has adapted and responded to things?
I think that it's been a shock for the industry because the seismic changes in the economy and the housing market and technology were all bubbling away really pre-pandemic. And the pandemic COVID has accelerated it to a huge degree, 3 or 4 times increase in demand for different types of property, different types of tech, and a different type of service. Definitely, I think the huge boom post January this year caught everyone by surprise. I remember lots of agents, really lobbying hard for Rishi Sunak to introduce and then extend the stamp duty. It turns out it really wasn't necessary.
No, it wasn't. No.
Great for consumers. I think probably most agents will say unnecessary for them. It's made conveyancers' lives hell and agents' lives hell, I think, fair to say. But for the industry as a whole, I think they are now facing greater acceptance of technology amongst their buyers and vendors. And I think the pandemic has changed people's view of cities, and it's going to take a while until demand for rental and sales in central London, Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham really come back to where they were. But then again, crystal ball gazing in this industry is a dangerous.
Do you think there's a couple of things I'd like to pick up on that? In terms of the sort of hybrid working environment that we are all doing now, do you think it will? Do you think it's here to stay? Do you think it, or will what we have experienced over the last couple of years permanently affect where and how people wish to live and work? Do you think?
Good question. I think it has. From a consumer point of view, I think homeowners and renters are wholly changed in their outlook to work, commuting
over the long term.
over the long term, definitely. There's absolutely no question about that. And the anecdotal evidence from anyone who knows people who work in offices is that very few offices are returning to the normal, you have a seat in an office and you commute to it every day and you're expected to do that. That, without a doubt, has changed. And that is driven by the cost of commercial property, the eye-watering cost of a desk in a central London office. So if you can cut that by 40% by having a lot of people working from home or hot desking, then that's a 40% of a very large cost cut. So I can see that happening. That's going to affect the estate agents.
People, what I was about to say was that people have actually been just as productive when they've been working from home, if not more productive, and a lot of them have been happier. Not all of them. Some people are desperate to get back into the office 5 days a week, and I get that as well. If all of these offices are going to be underused or underutilized, many of them presumably will end up as flats. Do people want to return to the cities and live in flats?
I think the desire to live in a city will carry on. But I think, and potentially we will return. I hope we do. Having just been to Palma and Mallorca myself, Palma is a city where people live and work, and it's not just for the hugely rich. It is. There's a huge range of different wealths living in that city. So as we were talking to the waiter in the restaurant, and that has not been the case in most British cities for a long time. And I think that's what will potentially come to pass, which is that city centres are not just for the rich, and therefore that's going to change the housing market.
Got it. Yeah.
My view.
Yeah. Let's pick up again, if we may, about sort of PropTech and FinTech, because we read loads about it in the industry press now. You've got a bird's eye view of what's happening. And there has, as you said earlier, there's been vast changes and improvements. Are they here to stay, or do you think people will revert, or where are we at in terms of the industry? And then we'll talk about the consumer.
So industry, I think the residential sector has been slower to pick it up than the commercial. So if you look at investment in PropTech and to a certain extent FinTech, it's all about the commercial side of it. It's all about how banks make themselves work better, and it's all about commercial buildings, offices, large residential blocks work better with tech. And that's really where, if you look at most of the investments going. Residential is so much harder because you've got to persuade landlords, individual landlords and individual agents to use individual tech and pay for it. So that is proving harder, I think, in the long run. But there are some standout success stories. So conveyancing is clearly one area where I think there's going to be seismic change the next 12 months, probably 24 months. So companies like Neo, but also a whole host of other PropTech providers are going to completely change the sales process.
So to speed up the conveyancing.
Yeah, and it's got to happen. It is absolutely ridiculous that.
Yes, I agree. And perhaps also speed up the mortgage applications and approvals.
Yeah, the whole sales progression thing is going to have to speed up. And agents play a role in that because they are part of the problem as well as the solution. So do conveyances, so do lenders, and so do search agents.
So we've been talking for the last 20 years about the system needed improving and speeding up and greater efficiency. Do you perhaps therefore feel that actually what people have had to do during the pandemic has taken a big leap forward in that respect?
Yes, definitely. And the idea that agents and lenders and all the other players in this sales progression scene must be more collaborative, that's what's changed. I think in the past, most agents saw it as a sort of giving the competitors information or helping out competitors by joining these sort of platforms. Now they've realized that if they get together and collaborate on them, then they can work. And there's Coagate.
Yes, I know who you mean.
They're a similar sort of operation, but it's a platform. But it's all the same thing, which is if agents all get together on a platform, work together, and help their customers by making the sales process quicker and less friction laden, then it helps everyone. In the past, they thought, no, I'm not doing it because it's going to help. It doesn't really help me.
What about the lawyers? Are they on board? The conveyancers?
Yeah, I think they are. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And the government, HMRC and now the Department for Levelling Up are very keen to get this moving, and the home buying and selling group, which you may be aware of, is
there's been so much talk over such a long time.
I know
what you're saying now, actually there is some serious improvements.
Yes,
right now.
Absolutely, and the tech can deliver now. In the past, it was debatable whether the tech could really deliver it. But from what I've seen, it does now work.
So you're filling us with joy.
Yes.
So that's the industry. What about the consumers?
I think the standouts again. The standout success in this has been in renting. Most consumers don't notice tech improvements in sales process. If the sales progression gets faster, they'll be very happy, but they won't realize how or why, I don't think. Apart from they might have an app to use. But there's companies like FixFlow, which have just been sold for a lot of money, who have turned the renting experience into something more joyful for the larger providers, and I think that'll filter down eventually into the smaller landlords and providers. So I think tech has quantifiably improved the way that tenants interact with property management, and that is really racing along. And if you've ever used or you do use the FixFlow system, and they are the leader. I'm not mentioning them just because I'm biased. They are the major provider in this area. Then it is quite stunning what tenants can do now. There are other platforms offering this.
What about deposit schemes and being able to use? I mean, what's it called? The open banking and things like that. I've seen at first hand how open banking works. It is very impressive, but it requires the user to give permission to use it, and that is the problem with open banking. Is that it doesn't have the ability to grow very fast. You have to. Renters, home movers, vendors, whoever have to give express permission for the bank accounts to be read. And not everyone yet has quite grasped that, I don't think. So we're getting there, and there are large numbers involved now, but it's still a way off because it's not just spreading quickly. It has barriers to its expansion. That's really interesting. I'm pleased that you're so upbeat and positive about the world of tech that we've been kind of forced into. Actually, is making some real ground changing at the moment.
I think it is. All change takes good 5 to 6 or 7 years to really impact. And you were talking about 2000 when location kicked off, or thereabouts. That you have to remember, that's when Rightmove kicked off, 1999, 2000. It's at the time everyone thought it was a joke. Really? Most agents were absolutely resistant to this ridiculous idea, but it took really until the mid-noughties before it really took off. So it took 5, 6, 7 years for Rightmove to if you look at their share price, it really took off once consumers, house hunters went, this is a great thing. But it took a while to spread. So I think things like open banking are going to take 5, 6, 7 years to really catch on.
I read somewhere that actually through the pandemic, technology, we've taken sort of we've gone forward 5 years in the space of one.
Yes, I think that's correct. Yeah.
So that's got to be good news. Nigel, I'm afraid it's crystal ball time. I know you love these questions, but let's just benefit, if we may, from your thoughts on what the next 6 to 12 months might look like.
I think absolutely. I think the surest bet is the rental market. I think from a landlord's point of view, it's going to be I think the lettings boom has been delayed slightly, and that's showing signs of now taking off. Extraordinary figures coming out of the lettings market at the moment in terms of tenant demand, and they've also got landlords have also got the house prices going up. Which we've all seen. So I would say that's going to carry on. Will be my crystal ball, I think, for the next probably year, because people are still moving around, and In the sales market, that is much more difficult one to predict. Everyone is always wrong about the sales market, as the Remain campaign found out to their cost when they predicted that Brexit would impact the sales market. But I would think that the boom has to come to an end. It's showing signs of. So I think the next 6 to 12 months is going to be returning to a more normal property market. You know, the seasons are completely out of kilter at the moment.
Completely.
The housing market currently should be going quiet. We're late summer, but it's not. Spring market didn't happen. Christmas market didn't happen last year. All this stuff. So I think probably January this year is my guess. It's going to return to normal operations.
Well, thank you. I mean, my feeling is it must end. It must return to normal operations. But in order for that to happen, there's got to be more supply. The lack of supplies is so tight that it's driving prices, and it's also mopping up the number of places to rent. So people are sitting in their house saying, well, I can't put my house on the market because there's nothing to buy, and actually, if I sold it, there's nothing to rent. So it's really tight.
It is really tight. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of stamp duty announcement to the next budget, is my other guess, because the stamp duty holiday proved one thing, which is that it's a massive break and an engine, alternatively, within the market, and its effect on people's appetite to move home, I think, has now been shown. And I think a more sensible system, which allows people to move around the system move around the housing market more easily, would be a massive step forward and help in that respect.
Interesting. Nigel, really appreciate your thoughts and your wisdom. Thank you for your time. You take care and keep up the great work. Keep writing.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me on.
Nice to have you. Thanks a lot.